Welcome back to the summit. Thanks for staying with us. Also with us, of course, our dearest guest, Rekha Sharma-Crawford, Anwar Arthur, and Dan Perry. Thank you all very much for staying with us. And as promised, we dive into the fundamental American question: when federalism collides with enforcement, and what happens when neither side is backing down? What happens to the republic? Let's take a listen, and we'll pick it up from there.
I mean, honestly, the crime-ridden cities are all Democrat-run cities. And if they want help, they have to ask for it. Because if we go in, all they do is complain. But if they want help, they can ask for it, and they're going to need help. Los Angeles, as an example, we went in, we solved it. The chief law enforcement officer in Los Angeles said they couldn't have done it without the federal government. A week later, he said they didn't need the federal government, So we don't want that. If they want help, they'll ask, but they have to say please.
All right, another quick fire round, 30 seconds each, and we pick it up from there. Art, please take the lead. Your 30 seconds are on.
So, yeah, when we're talking about federalism, we're talking about the power of the respective powers of the federal and state government. Immigration is a fundamentally federal issue. It's one of those things that the states don't have the ability to regulate in, and neither do the localities. Supreme Court has said that Congress's plenary power over immigration is as firmly embedded in the judicial tissues of our country as any other issue. And yet a lot of states and localities think they can make their own immigration policies. They can't.
Dan Perry.
This is a fundamental and defining tension in the U.S. since its inception. And generally speaking, in a federalized state, the federal side is going to prevail if there really is a conflict. However, the U.S., from the beginning, jealously preserved the rights of states in a variety of areas to basically determine what life is like in those states. But I do agree with Art that the country called the United States has every right to protect its border, even to deport people who come in illegally, even if they stayed for a long, long time. So this is a complex issue with a lot of philosophical nuances.
Rekha, last but not least, your 30 seconds are on.
I mean, going all the way back to the founding fathers, I mean, Madison wanted to say and did say that there was a clear advantage to the states. The states were were supposed to have a greater advantage in how and who was involved in their state activities. And I think, yes, immigration is a federal matter, but it is not independent of the state's ability to continue to govern how the state wishes to govern. That principle is found deep in the heart of all of the founding documents of this nation.
And to that point, police deals with an unlawful act, but the federal entity is the one to decide whether a situation is lawful or unlawful. And perhaps this is the current tensions. We are talking about the how, but not about the what. And in this respect, the policy itself, U.S. wanting to protect its borders, is this the way to go, Dan?
Well, I would ask whether a state should have the ability to provide sanctuary to immigrants that the federal government wants to either keep out or to deport, given that they're inside. This is the fundamental tension, and I think I would tend to come down on the side of the federal government, even though my own understanding, and I'm not a legal scholar, is that you could find justifications for either way probably, but logically, it comes down to the question of, do we believe the U.S. as a country or a collection of countries, each operating independently? And when it comes to immigration, and I realize here I'm sounding a lot more sympathetic to the federal government than I did in the earlier bit of the show, I wonder where should the states really be allowed to step in? I would ask Rekha what she thinks about that.
Well, I mean, look, the law is clear. If you look at 1327 D3, it is a detainer statute, and it allows the it allows the state government to, when they have someone in their jail, to issue a detainer, to advise, well, not issue the detainer, but to contact ICE so that ICE may issue a detainer. But it is clear from that perspective that the statute itself has a baked-in sovereign mechanism to it, meaning that if the state says, we don't want you to come in and issue a detainer, then they have that authority not to do so. What's happened is that there has been a crossing of the lines, if you will, because there's so much money attached to how much federal money is going to be given to the states if they don't comply. I think at this point, it's no longer about choice. It's about forcing the states to do what the federal government wants. And I will tell you, that's just not how the Constitution was set up. It just wasn't set up that way. And that's why you have the 10th Amendment that specifically says that.
All right, please chime in.
Sure, absolutely. So Rekha referenced 10th Amendment before. She did it again. And what she's really talking about is the anti-commandeering principle under the 10th Amendment. The federal government can't force the state to use its resources the way that the federal government does, unless, of course, it offers, incentives or blandishments or things like that. There's a difference between the states not wanting to assist federal immigration authorities and the states actively imposing and impeding federal immigration authorities. And that's really where the federalism argument breaks down. We have open borders in this country, except curiously, if you go to California, when you get checked to see whether you have any agricultural products. But yeah, so if New York has an immigration policy, it's going to impact North Carolina. It's going to impact Florida because, of course, people can move within the country. So consequently, you really need more federal authority in this instance to get the states in line, to get them complying. Now, I'm not saying that, the states have to, honor any detainer, or they should, be quite frankly, if you can get criminals off the street, it makes the whole community safer. But they can't actively impede. And unfortunately, through their rhetoric and their actions, we see a lot of state and government officials in this country doing exactly that.
So where do we go from here, Rekha?
I think, look, part of the issue is what you're seeing is that the American people don't appreciate and don't accept what is going on in the streets and the way that it's happening. They are telling the federal government, they're telling their state governments, they're saying this is not acceptable as a way of life for average citizens. And I think, the government, whether it be the state government or the federal government, owes it to the people to be able to address these issues in a reasonable, rational way that is solving problems. I think probably right now the problem has been, and it's been the same problem that has impacted immigration for decades, is that you don't have either side of the aisle that wants to solve the problem. And I don't say that to one side or the other. I think when you look at either side of the aisle of Congress, they don't want to solve the problem because these are hard issues that don't have easy solutions, and then they don't want to do it.
Dan.
Even if you have sympathy for the right of the government to police the borders and to deport illegal immigrants and all the rest of it, I think a reasonable observer would conclude that the methods deployed by ICE and the aggressive posture of the federal government and of this administration in defending what looks to be indefensible is creating a political problem. And it is in the nature of political problems that they get solved by political outcomes, by which I mean the midterm elections in November, where if the Republicans are sufficiently punished for this overreach and other instances of overreach, including one that is related, which is deployment of National Guard in various cities, again, for what is obviously, within what is obviously a political paradigm, if the Republicans are sufficiently punished, then the hand of the administration will be stayed.
Last but not least, Art, bring it back home.
Yeah, honestly, this is going to be strange. I agree with a lot of what Rekha and Dan have to say. Both sides need to trim back the rhetoric. And, we just saw the B-file or the B-roll that was going, ICE, Nazis, fascism. It's ridiculous. These are people who are enforcing a federal law that was actually created by Congress, by the people. And they should have the ability to do that. But, I agree with Dan. There's a right way and a wrong way to do things. And I think that, the sending Tom Homan to Minnesota, a very experienced law enforcement officer decorated by Barack Obama, to actually bring around the right way to do this. And I think that's going to be a model for the rest of the country going forward for the Trump administration.
Well, I am compelled to conclude this discussion, as many other discussions, by quoting The Wire. It's not about who's winning, but about who's losing faster or slower, depends on where you're looking at it. All right, lady, gentlemen, thank you so very much for joining us tonight. It was a pleasure listening to you. Until next time, thank you very much.